you've got two solutions. You can either say, why did this happen? Why is this happening to me? How long is this going to last for? This is ridiculous. And you can complain. And I find myself in that camp sometimes. Or you can say, this is inconvenient. What am I going to do now? Right? Because when you ask that question, what am I going to do? Now you've opened up new highways of opportunity so you can actually find a solution and go in a better direction.
When I was thinking about resilience specifically, I just think that it's impossible to go through this life without being in scenarios that are really uncomfortable.
I don't like the word resilience. To me, it's like an annoying, overused buzzword, and it feels more reactionary than proactive.
I think a lot of people they don't know what to do. There's the paralysis piece, right? Like, I don't know how to get through this or how to jump over that fence. What is risk in general?
Welcome to the Lunch Break ABCs. I'm Brandon Eastman. I'm joined by Christine Smith, Ben Albert, and Andrew Biernat, and we are the Lunch Break ABCs. We come at you once a month to talk about a topic that is near and dear to your heart. We go in order of the ABCs, and today we are talking about two things that were heavily voted on by you. The number one that was voted on was the topic of resilience, and the second topic was the topic of embracing risk. So two very important R words right there. We're going to be talking to you business owners, you solopreneurs, and you business leaders of how you can develop resilience and embrace risk in your life and your business. So guys, when you saw these two topics, resilience and risk, which were heavily voted on, they practically were tied. One had 40%, one had close to 30%. What were your thoughts on these? Why do you think these two topics are very important in this world today? And what do they mean to you? How do they go together?
I can go. I didn't plan on risk, so I'm excited to hear what people have to say about risk. When I was thinking about resilience specifically, I just think that it's impossible to go through this life without being in scenarios that are really uncomfortable. And if you're taking a high amount of risk, you're going to find yourself in those scenarios more frequently. So I think even if you have the handbook, the perfect 5-step guide, how to cultivate resilience, develop it, how to embrace risk, even if you have the handbook, you're still going to screw it up and you're still going to learn every single day. So I'm insatiably curious to learn about these topics, and I presume that's why they were voted as the highest winners.
I think some of it is people are also looking for like the camaraderie behind it, right? Like, oh, you feel this too. I'm not the only one experiencing these things, or the woes and the ups and downs of either starting a business, owning a business, or dealing with any of the hard things that we have to deal with. I think it's also very hard to talk about hard things, not just dealing with them, but talking about them, because not everybody reacts the same. Like, they're not like, oh, wow, it's so amazing that you did that, or wanting to offer advice or wanting to help. Not everybody has that response. I think everyone on this call would have that response, if somebody was like, I need help with something. But I think a lot of people they don't know what to do. There's the paralysis piece, right? Like, I don't know how to get through this or how to jump over that fence. What is risk in general? Like, is it financial? Is it emotional? Is it a mental risk? And some people aren't even willing to take the chance just because they don't know what the outcome is. And I think that's a hard thing to deal with. But you don't take risk, nothing changes, right?
What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I think Ben kind of hit it on the head. Often, as far as the connection between resilience and risk, the thought of, an increased amount of risk needing hopefully an increased dash of resilience in order to kind of survive the challenges that come from that. I think that is kind of maybe a core idea we can explore today. But I'm going to take an interesting take today. I don't like the word resilience. To me, it's like an annoying, overused buzzword, and it feels more reactionary than proactive. Like if resilience is my dealing with stress, why don't I focus on the stress and work on stress reduction first, and then resilience second? In my opinion, I think that's a better order of operations for things rather than leading with resilience first. And there's a lot of pros, a lot of good things about being a resilient person. But at the end of the day, I think if we're over focusing on resilience, I think we're maybe optimizing for the wrong thing. So definitely want to explore that idea with you guys today.
Wow. I love that idea. So that's very interesting because we must be resilient in many different areas of our life. So we must be resilient with our health, with our emotions, like what you just said, Andrew, with the stress as the example. And can we be proactive in every single areas at once? I don't know if that answer is yes. So it comes down to, okay, what areas will you be proactive with? I think of health. Like, what can I do with my health in order to be proactive so I can prevent a heart attack, right? I can exercise. I can decide what I eat and eat better. I can go get some blood work done so I can get some early preventative measures in here. But the reality is, yes, resilience is a huge buzzword right now, but it's very real. And when I think of resilience, I think of bouncing back, right? Because we're facing times every single day where we must be resilient, especially us and especially those listening. We all have times in the day where we have to be resilient. It could be something small, like somebody called off and you got to get a replacement for that person to come in. Or maybe your business partner just robbed you for $1 million and he's like, hey, Ben, peace out. I'm out of here. Maybe he didn't say anything. He just went to Mexico. Who knows? And now you've got to be like, oh man, what do I do? Right? I think that's the key. I think the key question when it comes to resilience, no matter what the situation is what am I going to do next? Right? Because you've got two camps of people, maybe more, but I'm thinking of two camps specifically. Something happens, which it will. You lose your job, spouse leaves you, kid gets sick, you can't go into work, whatever it is. You've got two solutions. You can either say, why did this happen? Why is this happening to me? How long is this going to last for? This is ridiculous. And you can complain. And I find myself in that camp sometimes. Or you can say, this is inconvenient. What am I going to do now? Right? Because when you ask that question, what am I going to do? Now you've opened up new highways of opportunity so you can actually find a solution and go in a better direction. So yes, I agree with you. Resilience is a buzzword. However, it's very real. And I do believe there are strategies to be more resilient. But I agree with you, Andrew, that we can also be more proactive as well.
I want to quickly, because I looked up a definition, it was perfect and it was short. The capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. Capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties, toughness. So I kind of also want to pass it back over to you, Andrew, because how do we develop that capacity? Resilience is a buzzword, but a lot of it happens behind the scenes, right?
Oh, 100%. And I think to Brandon's point, we're talking about the idea of, resilience shows up all over the place, right? You can be resilient at home, you can be resilient at work, you can be, there's all sorts of scenarios where being a resilient person is a great resource. It's a great thing to have. But I feel like other things have to happen first before you can have resilience, right? You have to have a fit mind and a fit body, and you have to be able to take certain steps in order to be a more resilient person, in order to recover from those things. You have to learn better coping skills. You have to learn how to, be a better communicator. You have to, there's a lot of other skills that I feel like are more important and kind of more proactive that play into creating resilience. And so I think for me, at the end of the day, I'm more prone to focus on what can I actually do? What do I actually have control and power over? Because I think in a lot of ways, resilience feels reactive in a sense. Something happens and now I must be resilient and kind of bounce back from that. But where possible, I'd like to control the bouncing. I'd like to control the momentum. Obviously, this is life and things are going to come at us that we don't choose. And from there, then we have to find ways to bounce back. But I think that's where we want to figure out, okay, well, how do I cope with challenges in my life? How do I communicate with others when things aren't going well? How do I manage my stress when things are hard? How am I taking care of my body so that I am more sharp, so I'm more aware, so I'm better able to handle hard situations? So in my mind, those are the things that I want to focus on, and resilience is going to be a natural byproduct of that.
So I have this question now to you specifically, Andrew, because what we're talking about here, aside from being crisis management, is I feel like resilience is the not consequence, but the result of something negative. Now, I would be curious to spin this. Can you build resilience because of something positive?
Interesting question. Right.
What would that look like?
Well, because you look at, right, let's look at the human body, right? If I'm going to train my body to be better, I have to, in a sense, do something negative. I have to create tiny little micro tears in my muscle, right, in order to make that improvement, right? So I do damage in order to make improvements, 100%. However, well, actually, this is good. This is really good. So if we're trying to improve or increase resilience, right, if that's our end goal, what is the positive that comes from that? What am I going to get because I'm a more resilient person? I guess that's my next question, is if we are trying to grow resilience, which I think I agree with you, Christine. I think resilience is grown through hardship, through challenge, through the fires of adversity. And so with that knowledge, what benefits do we get from having increased resilience?
Just responding to all this, I smiled and like had a brain fart when you asked that, Christine, because I'm being transparent here. I don't see myself as very resilient. I live a very cushy, comfortable life. I live in a nice house. I've got nice warmth. I'm self-employed. I kind of work when I want. I goof off all the time. And then something happens and I sometimes like fight, flight, or freeze. I'll freeze. So I don't even know if I'm the most resilient person. I will say that my biggest learning experiences has come from, the concept of post-traumatic growth. Something really crappy happens to me. Death in the family, loss of a job, ego death in some scenarios when I realize that I'm going in the wrong direction. That's where my resilience develops. But when I'm cushy, enjoying myself, sitting around watching Netflix, I don't think I'm developing much resilience in the easy moments. I develop the most resilience in the traumatic moments that could send me into victimhood, but I find a way to stay out of it and actually learn from that experience. So I don't know that you can become very resilient without going through really hard times.
Okay, so let me ask you this then when it comes to that, Ben, because it's very interesting you say that, because you are the catalyst of many projects that have a lot of moving pieces. You've got your podcast. You were in Vegas speaking. You have a strong social media game. You've got your clients. You've got so many different moving pieces where I don't really know how you have time to watch Netflix, but you do apparently. And so my question is, when you do freeze in those situations where any one of those many things I just named could go wrong, what are you doing in that moment? Because you've built up this muscle of resilience without maybe even realizing it, that you use when you need to use it. So what do you do when you freeze? Is it a question you ask yourself? Is it a thing that you do? What happens when you freeze?
Well, when I freeze, I freeze. So I'm the only one here who isn't a parent. And I would argue the resiliency of raising kids is way more difficult than speaking on stage once you have the reps in. A lot of people, public speaking, that's not a good example because everyone fears it. But like going and blabbering about stuff I know is less difficult than raising a child. I remember a scenario where we brought in basically a stray dog. We were trying to figure out where we were going to get him a home. And he attacked our current dog and love her to death. During the attack, I froze. I was like, what the hell is happening? And my girlfriend ran in and broke it up. And I'm like, she's the hero. So you asked me the question, what do I do when I freeze? I freeze. And part of why I share that is other people freeze. I don't think I'm an anomaly, but like, I don't have this crap figured out, y'all. She's the hero.
I think some of it's like trying to figure out how you can practice, I guess, to be resilient so that when a scenario happens, you're like, I don't know, you're not freezing necessarily, right? So the only reason I brought up crisis management is because like I build out marketing standard operating procedures all the time. broken down to like, content, social media, like all of those things, right? And, how would you respond if someone left you a bad comment, right? Like that seems so simple, but there should be a process for that, right? And it might be like, you don't touch the comment until the next day, right? Something that simple, because in the heat of the moment, we have a different response. And I think the same thing can be applied to those types of situations. So, working through, like, if you're looking to start your own business, okay, well, how do you plan for all of the what ifs? Well, what could the what ifs be, right? Like putting those on paper and being like, okay, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Well, here's how I would react if this happened. Who would you call? Who are your resources? And I think having that network and that community is extremely helpful, because when those things happen, it's great to have that flex to be like, oh, I know someone who can, help me, or they can walk me through this, or, they can just handle that thing for me. I also think resilience reminds me of like a virus, I guess. Like you hear about it, like it's a resistant strain, like, oh, right. So like, how does that happen, right? How does it become resistant? Well, it's been evolved to get to that point, right? So as a human being, we need to evolve with the things that we've experienced. But I think being proactive, just like you would in making sure your body is healthy, your meal planning, right? You're trying to make your life easier throughout the week. Well, what's going to make your life easier from a professional standpoint? Well, you should always probably be learning new things, right? Well, what does that look like, right? Oh, I learned how to, build a marketing plan for my business. Totally neutral. I had somebody else that talked about it, whatever. I might use that at a later point. There's no way to fully, prepare for every scenario, but I think the difference is preparing your reaction to a scenario is what the difference is. In a reaction. So if you're the type of person like Ben, who was saying that he froze in a situation that was like any one of us that could have happened to, right? How would we have reacted to that type of situation? Would we freeze? Would we stand there? Like there was actually an incident here at my co-working space. Like first couple months we were here, we had an event, and I had a s'mores bar, and it something happened where the guy that was filling up the liquid propane or whatever, it lit on fire and It fell on the floor. Everyone stood there watching it. I'm pregnant, getting the coffee machine with the water to dump it out. And everyone just stood there. It was like the most bizarre thing I've ever witnessed. And it was like slow motion, right? And that was just like a 5-second thing that happened. And could it have been different if other people had reacted faster than me, right? I don't know. Would it have? It didn't change anything. No one said, oh, wow, thanks for putting that out. Everyone's just like, okay, well, it's back to normal now, right? Like it's out, it's over. I just happen to be good in those situations. I don't know why, but
Because your mom.
Maybe, but I was even like that before I had kids. I was the person that would react on an emergency type scene situation. It was always weird after because the adrenaline goes away and that's like awful. But again, like sometimes it's practice. Some people already have some of those pieces in place for them because that's just how they are. But I think, the best thing in being not better at being resilient, but being prepared for the reaction to something is having the people, having the access to resources, knowing who to call. I think it makes it easier for that. It makes it easier for dealing with, because I think like tragedy is also risk, right? It's kind of combines those things, right? Something bad happened, it was because something didn't work out, right? So if you're going to take more risk, you need a team behind you to be able to do that. You're going to do it much more confidently in the future, and not, you're not as worried about the result. You're like, all right, it's either this will happen, or this will happen. And if something else happens, I got so-and-so I can call.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, Christine. And when you say getting yourself into those situations more, I'd post the question to everyone listening: when is the last time you've really found yourself in an uncomfortable situation? And I truly mean that. Like, when's the last time, think about it right now in your mind, when you were in a situation and you felt either less than, or you weren't sure what to do, or you were facing a giant problem, or you joined a new club? Because yes, community is super important. And I believe the number one way to build that muscle of resilience is getting yourself uncomfortable on a regular basis. And I think all of us do that just in the nature of the business that we're in. But what if you did it more, right? Because I think about the first time I gave, speaking of public speaking, man, I think of the first time I gave a speech to a group of people. It was about 40 people. And I prepared for hours and hours and hours on this 40-minute goal-setting presentation I was going to deliver. I had pages of serial killer notes, all in my weird, like, doctor handwriting. And I was like, okay, I think I'm ready for this. And then I'm up there, my heart's beating fast. No one else can see it, thank God. But I remember that, and now I think of doing it, and it's a very different experience because I'm used to that discomfort. It's still there slightly, because if it's not, then that's its own problem. But that was a situation that made me uncomfortable. I think of when I first joined the National Speaker Association. I was the youngest guy in the room. I'm thinking that other people were going to judge me. Other people were going to look down on me because of that. And I was completely wrong, but I put myself in that uncomfortable situation. I think about the first time I worked with a big high-ticket client. They said, hey, we want you to help us put together a sales process. And I was like, okay, I haven't actually helped someone do this yet. I didn't say this to them, but I'm going to help you do it. And thank God I did. I delivered the result. But I was like, am I going to be able to do this? But I wouldn't know if I could do it unless I put myself in that uncomfortable situation. So none of us want to do that, but how can you start small and build up to something bigger is really the question.
I got a quote for y'all. I was listening to Inky Johnson actually on a podcast this morning, and he was quoting Kenny Smith, and he said, champions do daily. So this is a Kenny Smith quote. Champions do daily what, you know what, I have this written down. This is what happens when, so I actually dropped Jen off at the airport at 4 a.m, and I think I'm falling asleep on you guys. Let's do this again. Champions do daily what everybody else does occasionally.
Ooh.
Champions do daily what everybody else does occasionally. And that's what I'm hearing from y'all. It's what are you doing daily that's in preparation for the big game, the big move. And Andrew, jump in, because I know you had something to say before I derailed and fell asleep on it.
No, yeah, you're good. I feel like there's like two things that kind of play into building resilience. There's like positive and negative things. It's like you can go out and you can take risks and you can, make positive change, and like things are going to break and things are going to go wrong. But then there's a flip side of that of like, I'm staying stuck in a bad situation and I'm not doing anything about it. And like, I'm building my resilience. I can just I'm keep bouncing back from the bad. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like there's two ways to build that resilience. And I guess maybe that's kind of the core of what I want to get into around resilience is like, let's build resilience in a positive way. Let's build resilience in a way where we're in at least attempting to be in the driver's seat, where we're intentionally taking risks. We are putting ourselves out there. We're making something. We're exploring in a lot of ways, versus just staying with the status quo and just building resilience by being dogpiled on. I guess is maybe a concept I want to throw to you guys too. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's like waiting for it, right? Like some people just kind of wait for the fires to happen. I'm not saying go seek them, but kind of being like, okay, well, how do we want to get our business to that next level? Okay, that's going to require some hard decisions. That's going to require some unknowns. But if we're going to progress in this forward position, right? And it could potentially backfire, but I think the difference is like you were making that move, not it was moved on you and you waited for it. I think the other thing too is we are assuming we're only learning to be more resistant because of the things we experienced. I really challenge all of you to consider what other people have experienced and listening to those things, because I feel, I'm not saying it adds as much weight to your resilience journey, but I think it definitely does make a difference, because you may be like, oh, how would I react to that type of situation? Or how would I have dealt with that? Who would I have called? Who would I, like we were thinking about like the dog thing, like we probably all had in our mind how we would react to that, right? Or how our spouse would react to that. The same thing applies to anything, personally or professionally. If someone else had that experience, you should be hearing more about those. Like I would want to learn more about what other people have experienced that hopefully I don't have to experience. But if I do, okay, well, what did they learn that I can now take from, so that my gap of tragedy is a lot shorter.
Yeah, that's one of the big reasons I love being a podcast host. And I know you guys relate to that, but we ask people these questions of like, Christine, you ask great questions of like, what are the challenges in your business, like on your CEO podcast, and you learn from other people's experience what not to do, so that when you do face something similar, you can think, oh, Richie went through that same exact issue and I can do something different. Or even like reading autobiographies can do the same thing. That's why a lot of successful people say read autobiographies. But my friend Jennifer Hendricks Fogg, who I know you know, Christine, she has this process for resilience that I absolutely love, and it's something we haven't covered yet, where she thinks of resilience as a 3-part process or even a 3-chapter process, where sometimes we're surviving. That's the first step. Sometimes we're recovering. That's the second step. And then the third step is sometimes we're thriving. And we find ourselves in one of these 3 seasons, right? So the question I'd like to ask everyone listening, because you're going to know the answer immediately. Right now in your life and business, are you surviving? Are you recovering? Or are you thriving? Right? Because we all go through these seasons. It all happens at different times, but generally it does go in that order. Survive, recover, thrive. Survive, recover, thrive. So resilience in every single one of those chapters is going to look different. When you're surviving, resilience might mean I made my bed today. When you're recovering, resilience might mean I did something for me today. I got a massage. Right? When you're thriving, resilience might mean I made 30 sales calls. I sent the email blast. I did the podcast. So the actions you take really change in the season that you're in. So if you're someone who's surviving right now, but you're looking at Ben who might be thriving, you can't really judge your actions based on what he's doing, because the two of you are in different seasons. And the first step is to determine what season that is. Now, someone asked a really cool question on LinkedIn. And I would like to, if you guys are up for it, I'd like to really dive into this question with you guys to get your opinion on this. But it was, let's see who it was. It was Sam Pelton. He said, right now, risk is the number one topic for me. I'm thinking about going on my own full time, and the prospect seems quite risky. So this is risk, but this is also resilience at the same time. So to this person, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are either working a job and they want to go full time, or they're about to start their business entirely, what advice would you have for them when it comes to taking the risk of going full time?
My simple, easy advice is take all your negative what ifs and just flip them. You're probably wondering, what if I fail? What if I can't pay the rent? What if I struggle? Well, what if you succeed? What if you make a lot of money? What if you are way more resilient than you expected? What if you don't fail? What if you crush it? Even if you struggle, what if you learn? What if you can take those learning and insights? What if this is clarity that going off on your own wasn't the right decision? What if this was the best decision you've ever made? If we kind of flip all our insecurities and see it optimistically, with the knowledge that we have the capacity, we have the skill set, we have the habits, we have the intelligence, that if things go wrong, we will recover. That's the key, because things could go wrong. I'm not going to pretend like I don't know the entire situation. It might not be perfect, but we know we're going to recover. We know we're going to learn. We know we're going to grow. What if I succeed? The 10x growth potential of taking that risk is worth it, as long as you have a plan B that it might not work. But what if it does work? Imagine what we can accomplish. So that's my mindset around it.
I want to chime in with the idea of, I think what makes more successful entrepreneurs is calculated risk. Because anybody can take risk. You can choose to walk out in traffic without looking both ways. That's a risk. Now, I like to look both ways before I do stuff like that, because I'd like to just calculate my odds here. What are the chances I'm going to get steamrolled? And so I think depending on this person's situation, and without really knowing them, it's kind of hard to advise. But you want to consider, what's the worst case scenario? And then what's maybe my best case scenario? And then maybe what's a probable scenario in between. And I feel like for my situation, if I look back in my life, I'm in a spot now where my risk tolerance is lower than it was previously. Okay. I am a single income household, and I've got 3 kids, all under age 5 and under. And so what happens now matters quite a bit. We've got a mortgage, we got stuff we got to take care of. Like, there's certain things I need to make sure are covered. Whereas when I was single and like couch surfing and like living whatever, like risk tolerance was through the window, and a lot of my decisions reflected that. And so, definitely consider what season of life that you're in, and then let that kind of color your tolerance for risk taking. And what that may mean is if, cool, you're single, living with your parents, like, you have a very high risk opportunity. Like, you can roll some big dice and see what happens, because the worst that's going to happen is you're going to keep living with your parents. You know what I mean? Whereas like, cool, like, maybe you're in a spot like me where you're like, man, I got family, I got this and that. You got to be a little bit more conscious of, okay, well, what does happen if things go south? Am I going to be able to pay the mortgage? What do we have to move in with my family? And Ben and I, and really all of us have probably had the opportunity to talk to entrepreneurs that decided to take big risks, and many of them lost. Like almost every entrepreneur I've talked to, they've experienced massive challenges, losses, things that they didn't want to do. I remember one particular guy, I forget his name, but he was living, like, he and his wife slept in a large walk-in closet for like a year or two while he got his speaking career up and running. And that just impressed the heck out of me, because he knew what the risks were. The risks of not succeeding here is like, we're not going to pay rent. And so, the rent on a closet is a lot more minimal. And so he can take a bigger swing. He can go all in on something like that. And so if you're in a spot now where your risk tolerance is low, then you may consider, cool, how do I do both? How do I do what I'm doing now and get something else humming and running? And then once I've got something running a little bit better, then I can decide when the right time is to take that jump. And I think there's you guys probably have some good feedback here too, as far as like the timing and if you're doing two things, when to jump into that second thing. Be kind of curious your guys' insight there too.
1,000%. So this guy, Sam, looks like a young guy. It looks like he doesn't have kids. So I'm going to assume his risk tolerance is a bit higher. He's a copywriter, so he's going to be an online business owner. So for him, you might go all in, Sam. You might be like, listen, man, these next 60 days, like, I'm going in on this thing. I'm taking no prisoners. I have to make it work, and you're burning the bridges. And to that, I say awesome. But like you said, Andrew, everyone's going to be in a different chapter, right? Do you have kids? Do you have the bills you got to pay? I won't repeat everything that you just said. But yes, the risk is going to be different, right? Like, for the longest time, and even now, I still have a steady income. Right? Because I recognize that if I had to make a full-time income from my podcast and from the work I do with clients, then what I would do would look very different, right? It's very different to need to make money from your business than it is to make money from your business and have it be supplemented on what it is you're already earning. Sometimes a sense of desperation can come into play. Like if you quit your full-time job, so let's say we're talking to Sam, and Sam, you work full-time. Let's say you make 60 grand a year. If you quit that 60 grand's out the window now. Now every conversation is sales focused. Every conversation in the back of your mind, you're thinking, am I going to close this person? Is this person going to pay me? Am I going to collect the payment? So you go from a place of serving your client to a place of desperation where you're thinking of you surviving. But things are very different if you do one of two things. You still have a job that pays you an income. Maybe you do something different in the meantime where you're only making 40 grand a year, but you're only working 3 days a week. So you can focus those other 4 days on the business, right? Or you can find a job in the space that you want to grow in. Like as an example with what you do, Andrew. Andrew, what's the name of the business you work with?
Selfpublishing.com.
Yes. And do you own selfpublishing.com, Andrew?
I do not. And actually, I'm in the process of transitioning out. I just transitioned out.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something we could talk about too. That's a display of resilience.
Right? Yeah. As I have to look at like, okay, yeah, like what's my risk tolerance? And I had to evaluate like, okay, if I am going to leave that W-2 job behind, I've got to make sure I've got something lined up. You know what I mean? And so, for some people, that means making sure they've got another hand on a W-2. You know what I mean? Cool. I'm going to jump right into my next role. Very common business wisdom. But maybe you just stack up some 1099 based clients. You know what I mean? Maybe cool. Maybe I'm going to just book out some work for myself, and then I'll be able to kind of take a leap and then go from there. And so that's kind of where I ended up at, where, I was able to kind of find kind of one gig that's going to keep me busy for a bit. And then we'll kind of see where that goes from there. Right. And I may be open to W-2 again. I may go 1099 still, I'm in a phase of options and opportunity, and it's super cool, but it's really scary. You know what I mean? And I think that's some of the challenge is, is addressing the risk and understanding the risk and doing it anyway, and doing what you feel like needs to happen. I'm kind of curious though, for Christine, you're probably the most entrepreneurial out of all of us as far as just the number of ventures, a number of things that you've gotten into. I'm kind of curious your insight around kind of risk in business and getting things started.
I mean, I feel like I'm, wrangling toddlers on a regular basis. Owning a business, right? There's no right answers and all the wrong answers, right? But having a brick and mortar there's certain things you got to be aware of, right? And I think that's something that people who are going into business need to think about. If you're opening up an online business versus a brick and mortar, like there's a lot less risk, right? And I would even advise this person, like, have you had a conversation with a financial professional? Like, what do you have to back you up? For how long? Can you go without not having an income for a certain amount of time to see if you really want to dive into this, if you have minimal bills or you can afford to pay for things for the next 90 days with no issues. I think that would definitely be super helpful. And having a backup, like kind of Andrew was, putting out there, like having a backup plan of, hey, I'll take some 1099 work, or I'll take some, W-2 work that I wouldn't normally take, but I'll take it this time around. And I think don't do things by yourself. Like if anything I've learned in being a business owner is, and I'm not even talking about like you have a partner, I'm talking about like you have other people in your business community that have been doing it longer than you, or maybe they're just starting out, but they're going to have feedback for you. And they're going to have, resources as well to be able to kind of like have deeper conversations about things that you're having a hard time with, and being able to be like, hey, well, why don't you do this? Or maybe you should contact this person, or, hey, this is what the problem is. Okay, well, here's how we're going to solve it. Or, here's some of the things that we're going to work through. I mean, having a network, like obviously I have, a huge network, that's my reputation, right? But in building a business, it's been invaluable to have so many different people that I can call regardless of what's going on with my business. If I need help with more marketing, if I need help with like changing documents, like I have all people for that. And it's so nice to not have to be like, oh my God, I got to figure out who to call for this. Hopefully he's good, right? Like that's the worst. You have an issue and now you have to try and find someone to help you solve it. And you may not solve the problem in a timely fashion simply because you can't even find the right person to help you. You don't want that. Like get your people in place first, who are going to support you in this, whatever journey you decide to go on. Have a business attorney, have a CPA, have a financial advisor, like be connected with other business owners in different practices than you and maybe the same industry. They're willing to have conversations with you and they're in the same industry as you are. They're going to give you really good feedback. And I think you have to take it. Like you got to take it with everything with a grain of salt, right? Because everyone does things slightly differently. But that's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned is like having those resources is huge.
I got a question for everybody. Who do each of you rely on when you go out and take risks? Who's in your network? Who do you ask questions of? Who do you lean on? I'll start first. For me, I lean on my dad a lot. He's a very wise, discerning guy. He's got his own consultancy that he's been running for 20 plus years now. And for me, it's just helpful to sometimes just speak my thoughts out loud. A lot of times I already know what I'm supposed to do, but just kind of talking to him sometimes just kind of helps me kind of work through where my head's at and where my heart's at, and some of maybe the anxiousness that I'm feeling. So for me, he's a huge help. And obviously, you guys are fantastic. And then kind of other business people that I know, specifically around if I have a question about speaking or something else, I can lean on some of these other professionals that have maybe been there and got a little more experience. But kind of curious for you guys, who do you lean into when you're looking at risk?
Excellent question. I would say, even though she's not involved at all in my businesses, so she is very involved, but she's not. My wife is like my number one person. Like when I'm like right now, I'm planning a retreat for October. And I've never done a retreat. I've done an event, but I've never done a retreat. And I'm thinking about going to an all-inclusive resort, bringing 12 people with us, having it be like a mastermind experience. And I'm going through this right now, and it's almost ready to begin selling, which is great. But I'm like, Bree, what do you think of this? Right. And she gives me her thoughts, and she gives me great ideas. So I'm blessed to have her in my life. I know not everyone has a significant other they can talk to you like that. But also, for those who don't have that, I'm part of a mastermind, which is called the CCA Mastermind. I don't even know what CCA stands for. I just love the group. I love the people. It's clarity, and then 2 other things. I think A is action. I don't know what the second C is, but it's with Di Manuel, who spoke on Lunch Break one time, and 12 other of his clients. And whenever I have a question or whenever anyone's working through something, we post it in the WhatsApp, and we all get to work on helping each other. So that community piece is super valuable.
My answer's similar, so I'll just jump in. It's my girlfriend Jen, and I've never in my life have I been totally broke, but also never in my life have I been totally rich. So the concept of taking a high risk was foreign to me because I was going a normal path most of my life. We're not rich, but she had a house and 2 kids that she was raising on her own well before we ever met. So when I came into that relationship, I didn't have to take over everything. And being in a home that's purchased with a great family and a partner that's making good income gave me the capacity to take the risk that I had never taken before. So it's not beyond me that if I was not in this scenario, I might take less risk. Having a partner in your life that supports you in that regard is huge.
Yeah, it definitely makes a huge difference. So I will, my husband is definitely a great sounding board. But my CPA, my business attorney, my business coach, and then I have a couple like strategic business owner friends, or really close friends that I talk with constantly about whatever it is, whatever the ailment is of the day, to kind of help figure things out. I think that's just it. It's constantly trying to figure things out. What's the best option? Sometimes it's easy to make decisions, and sometimes it's just not.
It's that community is so important. And this is the thing, like we didn't even say this yet. Life isn't exciting without risk. It's not exciting. Why do you think you walk into, we know this casino, but for any casino, like why do you think you walk into Turning Stone or Saratoga Casino, Christine, and you see all the zombies on the machines at 2 to 3 a.m., right? That's not me judging. It's just observation. There's literal zombies on these slot machines that pull that thing all night long, pulling that thing. Why are they doing it, right? They're risking all their money, but they're doing it because of the small chance that their name could be on the wall saying this person won $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in the jackpot, right? How exciting is life without risk? Now, it's important to choose a constructive form of risk, right? Gambling in the casino, gambling in the stock market, those are destructive forms, right? There's a very low rate of return on those things. And by the way, when I say gambling in the stock market, there's ways to make use of the tool that is the stock market in great ways that isn't gambling, but a lot of people gamble and they day trade, and that is a form of gambling. So my point is there's an acronym for risk. Okay. And we love acronyms here. We have one every episode. I think it's customary at this point. So there's an acronym for risk. It's RISK. It is risk. And the first letter R stands for reflect. And I think specifically when it comes to this, reflect on what is the worst possible thing that can happen if you do this. So you want to go start this new business, Sam Pelton. What's the worst possible thing that can happen to you? You fail. You make no money. Maybe you're lazy. You don't put the work in, right? You don't think you're lazy, but you are when other people who actually put the work in look at you and say, wow, Sam's lazy. I don't know you, Sam, but this is just me saying it's just reality. I see a lot of business owners, quote unquote, who take no action, no social presence. They're not doing anything because they just think business owner means write their own schedule. Not the case. You work more than you would work for someone else when you work for yourself, but you're doing it because of the goal. You're doing it because of the vision. So there's 2 pieces to reflect. The first letter in risk. Worst case scenario, what happens? You're broke, you don't succeed, and you have to go live with your mom again, right? That's the worst case scenario. Is that so bad? You got no kids. You've got no spouse. Who cares if you got to go live with your mom again, especially if you like your mom? So that's the R. The other part of R is goal and the vision, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't take the risk in the first place. What's the best case scenario? Like what you said, Ben. What if you took what if I fail and turned it into what if I succeed? What if I actually make money? What is the goal? What's the vision? What could happen? So know the worst case scenario. It's very important to know it. Don't be blind to it, because then when it happens, you're like, oh my God, how did I end up here? It's like, dude, you could have foreseen this 6 months ago. But instead, think more often of the best case scenario. The I in risk stands for initiate, right? To mitigate risk, you have to take massive action. Initiate movement in the forward direction. Massive action every single day, 10 hours of it, especially if you're only full-time, 10 hours of it minimum every single day to get to where you want to get to. S in risk stands for solve. You're going to run into issues. This is where resilience comes into play. Solve for the problem. Find yourself a community. Listen to the lunch break ABCs every month and get around other people who can help you, right? Or find yourself a spouse. That's cool too. But that's kind of the universe. The universe will give that to you when it's time. And then the K is keep moving forward. KMF. Keep moving forward. You got to keep going. Even if you fail. Even if this retreat doesn't sell as many seats as I want it to sell, I'm going to do it anyway, even if there's 5 people there, because I need to keep moving forward to get the new experiences, to get uncomfortable like what we were talking about. And that's how you mitigate risk, and that's how you win.
You got a mic to drop?
Pen.
No, I love that. And I do love that we keep creating acronyms. Was that an acronym you already came in with, or did you make that one up as we were talking?
I made it up as we were going.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Those are the best
It
ones.
fits.
Wow.
Oh, man. I love it. Yeah. And I guess for kind of everybody else, kind of reflecting on that, the reflect, initiate, solve, and keep moving forward. Any of those 4 pillars that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
I think we've touched on a lot of these, but I do want to pinpoint keep moving forward. That goes back to the quote that champions do this every single day. They don't just, show up once in a while to take a risk. They put in the effort every single day to have the resilience, to have their risk, capacity to succeed. The one thing I'd say with keep moving forward is it might not even be forward, but you need to keep moving. Because another thing, and this is discernment, it's a different conversation. There's certain times where you need to cut your losses and move in a different direction. So you might not always move forward, but keep moving somewhere. And sometimes, like God did it, maybe you take a rest, but be intentional. Keep moving, keep going, because if you hit a roadblock, you learn from it, and then you find a new way to do better next time.
Well, that's our show.
No, I think so. I really think so. Is there any final points that we haven't covered? I think we gave Sam great advice. I sure hope so. Good luck, Sam, with whatever you do. And everyone else, hope next time you need to be resilient, you know how to do it. And I think the biggest part is having a system ready and having these ideas in your head ready so you can say, what season am I in? What am I going to do next? Is it time for me to initiate? Is it time for me to solve? Is it time for me to keep moving? Where am I? I think that's the biggest thing. But are there any other final thoughts? Sweet.
I think so.
That was good. Yeah.
Cool. Excellent. This has been the Lunch Break ABCs. Keep an eye out for the next poll that we're going to have. It is after the letter S, QRS. So after the letter R.
Is
so
the
S
letter
next.
S. Yeah.
My subconscious kicked into place. So S is next.
Have we been doing this like 20-something weeks? How much? What?
Yeah, man. Over a year.
Over a year.
Wow.
Months.
Weeks. Yeah, I said weeks. 20-something weeks. 20-something months.
Almost 2 years at this point.
We're almost to Z.
Oh my gosh.
I can't believe we've stayed with it. Like, kudos. Yeah. Good job, everybody.
We're about to get to the harder letters.
Shiny object syndrome, ADD, entrepreneurial people. But yeah, we've stuck with it. We're killing it.
Q is going to be like quotient or something weird that we're going to have to talk about, but we'll figure it out when we get there.
One of them.
Quiet quitting.
Yep. Quiet quitting. Yeah.
What are we going to do for X? Xylophone playing? Why Xerox failed?
Combine Q, Z, and X all in the same one.
I mean, X, we could do like silly things like, expectations or.
Oh, yeah.
something like
X
that.
marks the spot.
Yeah. I'm sure we can come up
Ooh,
with
that's a good one, too.
some good ones.
Yeah, hit the target.
So keep an eye out for our next poll where we're going to ask you out of 4 topics, which one do you want to hear about in the letter of S? Share the show and let us know in the comments, when have you had to be resilient recently and what risk are you contemplating taking? Maybe we can help you work through it. This has been the Lunch Break ABCs. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.